All right, it is currently 7:33. I think we can begin. Hi, everyone. My name is Barry. I'm the managing coordinator at Sierra Madre Playhouse. I would like to thank you all for attending our One Book, One City collaboration with Sierra Madre Public Library. And I hope you all enjoyed our premiere of the reading of Back Porch by Chris Offutt, who is here with us tonight. But right now I'm going to turn the time over to our producing artistic director, Christian Lebano, to introduce everybody else here.
Well, good evening. It's so strange not to be able to see our audience, but I am so grateful that you tuned in for the premiere. At 7 o'clock, I became very nervous as I knew that people were listening to the work that we had done. This collaboration is one that we have done for the last several years with One Book, One City and Sierra Madre Public Library. And it's Catherine Addy, who is a great friend to the Playhouse and a great friend to the public library, has underwritten a lot of this work tonight. And Catherine, we're very grateful to you. And I am really thrilled that Chris Offutt, the author of this extraordinary short story, is able to join us, and that I was able to convince him to read the narration of his own story. And I'm eager to hear what he thought of it, because he hasn't, this may be the first time he's heard it since we recorded it. And then also we're very lucky to have one of the best actresses in town, Anne Gee Byrd, whom you may remember. She was in our the scene we did from the final tour for the festival a few months ago. When I was reading the story for the first time, I heard Anne in my head, and so I was thrilled when she came on. Unfortunately, Jackson Kendall, who many of you know from Tuesdays with Maury and both of our productions of A Christmas Story, wasn't able to join us tonight. But Jeanne Marie Valleroy is with us, and Jeanne has been working with me on each of these productions, and we've been learning how to edit and put these things together. And so Jeanne, I'm thrilled that you're here and you can answer any technical questions that anyone might have. So welcome, you guys. So Chris, I hope you heard what we did to your story, and I hope that you liked what it came, how it came out.
I loved it. When I write, it's just me alone in my room, and then imagining what Ruby and Charlie would do, and imagining what they would say, and then I just try to transcribe it as best I could. But the actors, make these people real and say the lines, and they better than I could imagine. So it's just remarkable to sort of hear them be real rather than just some version of my brain. So thank you.
Oh no, Chris, when Catherine and Christine from the library talked to me about doing the collaboration again, it's finding an appropriate play that would work for that was set in Appalachia. Notice that I'm saying Appalachia.
I appreciate that.
Yes, Chris taught me that it's not Appalachia, it's Appalachia. So I decided that we would find a short story, and I read lots of short stories that were based in Appalachia. And when I got to Chris's, I was so impressed. I fell in love and was so intrigued by Ruby. And I think what appealed to me about the story, especially for this collaboration, was the call of the land, that, Ruby was of that land. She'd been gone for 60 years, but there was something about the land that made it necessary for her to return to it, to return to the place she was born. And I thought that call of Appalachia would really fit with the Bill Bryson's book. So I'm again so grateful to you for letting us share this story. And, you know, and I've told you often enough, Chris, how I just love this story. So, and I'd like to bring you in so everybody can hear the real Anne and not Ruby. And I'm just curious what it was like when you first read it and knew that I had offered this role to you. What your first take on the story was.
First of all, the whole idea of returning to the land, I don't think I have that same connection to where I grew up, but there are certain things that echo about that. But most of all, I just thought, oh my God, I want to play this role in something. The movie, the play that you're going to write that's got, you know, whatever. It's just a fabulous, fabulous character.
Yeah.
And your voice, Chris, in this story is just, no one else should ever read it out loud. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. That's a very high compliment coming from, you know, an actress. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Anne.
I told Chris after we had recorded it and I was listening to it with Jeanne that he reminded me of Earl Hamner Jr. Do you remember from the Waltons? He was the man who had lived that story. And then he became the narrator of each of those episodes. And Chris surprised me when he said, well, I don't know it. Because I guess in his holler, he only got one channel, and it was not whatever channel the Waltons was on. Right.
Yeah. We got our television from West Virginia. We couldn't even get it from Kentucky. And yeah, any NBC affiliate I watched, but nothing else.
Hey, Chris, can you talk a little bit about the setting? Because I know, I'll tell the audience, a couple of the photos that we use were photos that Chris actually took. The voting house is actually the voting house that he was thinking about. And that next one, that is that long building that's got the ivy on it, that is the general store. Yep. That he's referring to in the story. And he had these photographs that we incorporated. Can you tell us a little bit about that part of the world and what it was like to grow up in that world?
I can try to talk a little bit about it, but that's all I've written about for 30 years. So it's going to be hard to reduce it. You know, it's surrounded by the Daniel Boone National Forest, and there was already a town there, and was the last national forest designated as such by the federal government. So it's the only one with a town inside the forest. So when I say I grew up in the woods, I really did. There were dirt roads and creeks, and about 200 people. There'd been a mining community in decline. So, you know, like anybody, I suppose as a kid, you just think it's, you know, where you live is like everywhere else. Through books, I learned that there were cities and there were, you know, big buildings and all that. And I knew there was more to it, but it was a beautiful, beautiful place to live in terms of the beauty of the nature. It wasn't until I left, I hitchhiked out when I was 19, that I learned that, you know, it was an extremely different world culturally than the rest of the United States. It was like sort of like being an immigrant to the USA, except I already spoke the language and I could pass more readily because, you know, I had light skin. Did that answer the question? I can't remember it anymore.
Yeah, it did. It did. I have to ask you, Chris, do you feel like your Appalachian dialect has flattened? And because I know you spent time here in LA as a TV writer on First Blood and a couple of other shows too. But do you feel like you speak the way you did when you were a kid?
No, of course not. You know, when I went to New York and I lived in Boston, I lived in different places, And mainly what I wanted to do was fit in, of
Mm.
course. You know, when I first went to New York, the minute I'd open my mouth, people would just start making fun of me. And so I think my accent eroded and got chipped away at, mainly because I'm a good listener. So whenever you hear somebody who has a really, really thick accent from wherever they're from or the region that they grew up in, really it means that they just don't listen to anybody. You know, they could not care less.
Oh, this is funny. I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah. When I go back home, it thickens up immediately, though. You know, it's very familiar.
Mm-hmm. Do you still have family in that part of the world?
I have a sister who lives in the state, but not in the hills anymore. We all the kids left. You know, there's nothing there. And then my dad died. My mom moved to Mississippi, where I live now. So I really don't have many any family there. I have some good buddies, the ones who are still around. You know, it's it's a hard world, and a lot of people just didn't quite make it. You know.
Mm-hmm. As I was speaking to Chris back and forth about the story and going on and on about how much I loved Ruby and how much I loved this story, he shared that, and I'm going to let you tell the story rather than me telling it, but that it was part of originally it was part of a series of linked stories you were planning to sort of release as kind of a novel about Ruby.
That was pretty much the idea. And I had a few early stories. I decided that I'd written about men mainly for many years, and I wanted to write about women. And then and I did, and I learned a lot about myself and about writing. It was also very freeing to write about women because I didn't have that pressure of representing my gender and all that stuff. I really loved it, and in the process, I fell in love with each version of Ruby, and then I decided to try to string them together into a kind of a narrative that would cover her a whole life. But I don't think it didn't really work out. So I wound up with about five or six stories about this person at various parts of her life. Not enough for a book. And this one was intended to be the last story in the book when she, you know, at the very first one, she's 8 and now she's going back to where she grew up. There is a pull of the land. I think it's true for a lot of people who grew up in a distinct region or country or place, and she wants to go home to die. And I wanted her to go back, so I had to come up with a compelling reason and an illness, but that would be travelable, so to speak, and in the, you know, and I love Ruby, and writing that story was painful because, you know, I'm writing about the death essentially of a person I cared deeply about, even if she is imaginary with Anne's voice.
Mm-hmm. I know you told me that originally that you had an idea about setting it in different rooms in their house, right? And that's how it came to be called Back Porch.
Yeah, I get these conceptual ideas and I get locked into them. Yeah, every story was going to be the title of a different part of the house. And it was just trying to be an organizing principle. And again, an idea I discarded, except I kept Back Porch because I liked it as a title. Although I'm not convinced that I don't think there's a reference in the story to a back porch.
No.
So maybe
But for me, you know, I actually really love it because, and I think I described this to you, you know, the ledge that she finally finds her ledge where I imagine she sat as a little girl looking over the valley, having, you know, imaginary conversations or real ones with friends or kin. And that was her back porch, sitting there on that ledge overlooking the valley. And there's just something about the intimacy of a back porch as opposed to a front porch where you expect to meet visitors and things.
Right.
Yeah.
Back Porch is yours. What did you think, Anne, about that?
About Back Porch,
Yeah.
it's also a generational thing. Now, people don't have back porches anymore, do they? They have decks or patios or something.
Right.
But I remember Back Porch, and I remember creating houses under willow tree in our backyard. So both of those things resonate for me.
Yeah. I just was so moved. It's not just a call of a place, but it's a desire to meld with that place. There's that moment with the last ounce of her strength. She takes off her shoes and socks and then burrows her feet into the earth, and it is if she is returning to the earth, unless Charlie gets somebody to come look for her. Some hiker is going to find bones there one day, and
Yeah.
I don't know, I thought that was so powerful, Chris.
Well, thanks. I mean, that was the idea exactly, is that she would be all alone. She had to get rid of Charlie one way or another, and it had to be strong enough to getting rid of, to where she would have time to die, and if in the story, he says he's going to go home and call the sheriff, I think. If he did, they're not going to go running around in the woods looking for her body. They'll just be like, well, okay, thanks, Charlie, you nut. Stop bothering us.
Right. Right. I've said to Chris how much I enjoyed this story and how much I love this character of Ruby. There's such a mixture of real awareness of who she is, and strangely this nobility, in just like a total acceptance of who she is and the situation she's in. And Chris then told me about these other stories, and he has since shared a couple with me. And I told him that if I were younger and if I lived back there, I think this would make such a beautiful short film. I can just, so little of it needs to be in dialogue, that there are these great, I can just imagine showing people what Ruby sees when she sits down at that on the ledge. And Chris has agreed that we might try to see if we could string some of these together. So I hope he's working on a novel now. I don't know if you want to tell us anything about this novel, but later on he's going to share these stories, and we're going to see if we can make an evening kind of a through line of Ruby that we can share with audiences.
That sounds great. That would be wonderful. And I have these other stories about her, different parts of her life, including when she was 8, one when she's, I forget the ages, late teens, and she doesn't have an easy life. Part of writing for me is just to find a character, fall in love with them, throw obstacles in front of them, and see how they deal with them. And then that's how I get to know these people. I mean, it's the same with real life, and so I have plenty of them, and I would love to do that. In fact, I'm already spent way too many hours fantasizing about moving to Sierra Madre, California permanently, and getting a condo there, and being able to just live out my days writing plays.
We'll welcome you with open arms. Hey, I'm going to say one more thing, and then there are a couple of comments I just wanted to bring out of the chat. But Anne Valleroy, who strangely, that same last name as yours, Jeanne. No, this is Jeanne's mom. Talks about the poetic words and phrases in the story, and then she has a question. But I want to share again with the audience, because you've only heard it once. I've read it a lot and listened to this recording a lot. But I told Chris my favorite moment in the play, or in this short story, which to me speaks to the poet that Chris Offutt is when Ruby thinks about the broken stones in the graveyard, and she remembers being a girl and looking at the dates and the hyphen separating the dates and wondering that that little line could represent an entire life. And then now she realizes as she's about to die, the brevity of that, of a life, and how, that line can represent how quickly it goes. I thought that was just extraordinary, Chris. I just love
Thank
that.
you.
Really.
I appreciate it. I made it up.
And we're grateful that you did. So Anne goes on to ask you why she left at 15.
Do I need to read these?
No. She's asking you, why did Ruby leave at 15 years old?
Does it say 15 in this story?
No, it's 60 years ago and she's 75.
Oh, right. Oh, gosh. Well, maybe she left a little older and I'm bad at math, but she's a teenager. She gets pregnant and her grandfather throws her out, essentially. And the young, very young guy that she's with abandons her, and he's ill-equipped. They're both ill-equipped for the situation, and so she gives up the baby in Lexington and then heads west. Unfortunately, this is the plot of one of the stories that I was going to send you. So, that's how I know it so well.
I thought it would be something like that, because she refers to the kinds of boys that she liked, which were, faster than Charlie, right?
Yeah.
Can you relate to that at all?
Good.
So Michelle Simeone asks you, how did you find Ruby in your storytelling? Is she a compilation of women you knew growing up? Where did Ruby come from?
I've lost you momentarily. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
My internet is bad here I live in the country. How did I find her?
How did you find Ruby?
Yeah.
And is she a compilation?
Really, no, I never met anybody like Ruby. Ruby is really an older version of every woman that I would like to have gotten involved with as a young man. And none of them ever wanted anything.
Oh, we've lost you for a second.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, you're frozen, Chris, if you can hear us. So, Anne, can you talk a little bit about Ruby? What was it about Ruby that made you, it's that thing that happens to an actor when you read a character that you just want to play. Can you put your finger on what it was about Ruby that appealed to you?
Some of it is, I've reached the age where the roles they hand me, I'm either dying, have dementia, have some terrible illness, or I'm taking care of somebody who has that. So to have someone facing death and still have the kind of vitality that she has, and the kind of acceptance is very appealing to me.
What I thought was particularly interesting about Ruby too, I don't know when the audience cued in on what she had done to make money, it's laid in all the way through the story, that she had worked as hey Chris, that she had worked as an escort or
Right.
prostitute, that she's so, I don't know how to describe it exactly, but that she's so clear about the work. And I love that interchange with Charlie, What, did you own them? Or did you own these motels? No.
Yes.
Were you a maid? No. You know, he's so, and then the fact that she's got, that she can read him so quickly. And then that beautiful line where she says to him, "Go home to your wife," a line that she had said to many strangers before. It's just, I don't know. I thought all of that came together in a great way. I wish Jackson were here, because I love too how he's such a gawky 25, you know, that he gets so embarrassed, you know, when he looks over and realizes how beautiful Ruby must have been in her youth. And then he's afraid that he's getting carnal thoughts about her. Just think that's hysterical.
It's supposed to be funny.
Yeah. Well, so let me look at the chats again. Meryl Gerber has watched, and she said she met you quite a few years ago. So I don't know if that name. Oh no, here it is. I am Meryl Joan Gerber, a writer who lives in Sierra Madre. I met Chris Offutt at a writers' conference long ago, and she's been writing for 30 years. So yeah, I'm glad.
Hi,
Meryl, thank you for joining us. And then this one doesn't have a name. The image that sticks with me in the description of the cabin merging with the woods. Is that based on just your imagination, or did you have an old cabin in mind?
I mean, it was a company town where I grew up and where everything is set in this story too. So as a result, there's a lot of empty buildings and abandoned buildings from the old days. So what I noticed even as a child was how rapidly the woods sort of takes its own back, you know, and there would just be these blurred lines between what was a yard, what was now part of the woods, and then this building. And so I that was the idea of it, was it doesn't take much for nature to reclaim itself.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll probably find that out soon.
There was actually a book published not too many years ago about what would happen if humans all of a sudden just disappeared, how quickly the earth would, it was, not that long ago that it was
take very long.
Yeah.
And depending on the climate, you know, Kentucky gets four full seasons, lots of rain, lots of sun, you know, and so it wouldn't take long.
Yeah,
but I appreciate that comment. Yeah.
One of the most moving parts to me is when they stop to listen to their storm, because having moved west, I'm from Ohio, where storms were wonderful and frequent and rapid and surprised you. And I do miss that a lot.
I mean, I lived in Albuquerque and in Arizona before working in LA, and that was the thing I missed most was rain, just the dramatic thunderstorms particularly of the Midwest, but in general. Yeah.
Jeanne, let me bring you into this conversation a little bit. You know, we have now worked together on several of these stories. Can you just talk about a little bit about the process that we went through together, you know, from recording the cast to then the work we've done? Just give the audience a taste of what we did.
Yeah, we, like Christian said, what we do is we using a website called Clean Feed, we record the actors. It's kind of like a Zoom, but it's just a phone call version. So we send them a link, and then I can record and, you know, the whole entire like reading, and it allows the actors, if, you know, there's a line flip or things, we can go back. And then once I get that, I take it and I put the audio into Audacity, which is like an editing program, and I can cut all the spaces that the lines are messed up. And then we, Christian and I sit and talk about like what sound cues he would like in different soundscapes. Like for this one, we have the car driving in the rain, and I go and I find those, and then I start layering them on top of that, and then send Christian a version, and then him and I work, okay, this needs to be set, you know, this one doesn't work, or changing the timing just to make everything work. And then we go and find images that kind of just feel like they fit with the story and where we're at, and just give us that feeling. And we, using iMovie, I overlay those over the audio, so we kind of get the story through images and the audio.
Mm-hmm. Our plan is to build a library. So this is our third released off the shelf. And Jeanne has recorded the next one for next month, which is a big change of pace. It's called The Most Dangerous Game. It was first published in the 1920s, and it was turned into several movies. And it's very much like a Saturday afternoon serial. It'll be fun for the audience. It's a change of pace. And we're eventually going to have them available as podcasts, simply as podcasts, but I didn't feel like we had enough of a library to make that worthwhile at this point. But so rather than just watch a blank screen, we started laying in these images, which aren't supposed to be illustrative, but are supposed to be evocative. So at least while you're listening to the story, you can see, you know, through the windshield and see the wipers and see rain on the windshield. At least it gives you something to look at and then maybe look away and come back and look at each time. I know that Barry has linked to Chris's photographs. He has quite a few more photographs that he shared with us from his Instagram feed of photos from that area. There was a picture of the lake that Charlie refers to that we ended up not using because you took it on this very bright sunny day. Chris, what were you thinking?
I don't know.
It didn't fit into the sort of through line that we were trying to create of the rain. And did I cut you off? Did you want to say something?
I just wanted to say that the sound was so delicate and evocative, because I'm always afraid when somebody layers something on, particularly the kind of wonderful description that Chris has given us, that it'll be intrusive or that it'll override. And it was really delicate and beautifully done, I thought.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I you know, we were very selective about what we chose to include. I love the whippoorwill. You know, yeah. I love the owl at the end. Those, for me, those created the place in a beautiful way. A beautiful way. Well, I don't see any more questions in the chat. People aren't asking things. So, Chris, all I can say is thank you. You know, it was discovering your story was great. Reaching out to you and becoming, you know, having this pen pal relationship as we're talking about the story, I so enjoyed that. And then just getting to work with you on this and having you actually narrate your own story, it was just tremendous. It was a real gift to our audience. It was a gift to me. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope it was a good experience for you.
I mean, I loved it. Thank you. It looks like there's another chat question.
Oh, well, yeah. So there's a question about who is Ruby addressing at the end. I got to put my glasses on. Tried to do this without them. Hints on that story, and that's from Stana. So what do you think, Anne, before we ask the author, who was she talking to?
I personally was addressing kids I used to play mumbly peg with. Anybody know what mumbly peg is?
Yeah. Yeah, with a knife.
Yeah.
Pocket knife.
That's a whole other conversation, Anne. I want to hear about this little Anne playing mumbly peg with her friends. I don't know if your parents knew that you were doing that. But it is
dangerous if you're barefoot.
Okay. The story, she says that there's a shadow with the face of everyone she ever knew.
Yeah.
And I loved that idea, that, you know, that I don't know, for me, it was such a welcoming sort of, there was nothing frightening about it. It was there were this group of people were there to welcome her to the other side. You know, I thought that was extraordinary, because it was a single shadowy figure, but with the face of everyone she had ever known. I don't know.
I mean, to answer the question, there wasn't a particular person in my mind that Ruby was addressing with the watermelon seed. You know, she's on drugs, she's ill, and she's finally at home with a modicum of peace that she hasn't had in a long time. So it just seemed to me like, you know, in that situation, she might regress to something she was proud of. And, you know, that is something that, I mean, that's something in my mind to be very proud of. They have watermelon seed spitting contests at county fairs, you know. So if you win that, you may as well brag about it on your deathbed.
When we recorded it, I had Anne do a couple of takes as a young girl saying that, and then we did a few, you know, the way that Chris describes her state of being, and the one we chose, I just thought was so just so sad that
it's a beautiful ending. It's a beautiful interpretation of that line, and it really just buttons it up in a way that my idea was that it was a gamble whether this would work, this line at the end of this, you know, and I thought, well, it's worth it. It's worth the risk. And then to hear Anne's interpretation of it just confirmed for me that the gamble I had taken when I wrote this story originally was well worth that risk. So thank you, Anne, for that.
But you know what's interesting, Chris, is that you didn't put that line in quotation marks. It is part of the narration at the end, and that's why when I was doing the adaptation, it's not in quotation marks, and I don't know if that was just an editor's mistake, but that's when I said, you know, I'm going to have Anne do that last line, because I wasn't sure if you had some different idea about it as you were writing it.
No, in fact, it never occurred to me that it wasn't. I just thought it seemed natural that it shouldn't be. I didn't realize until you just said it that maybe I should take a look at this stuff sometime. Or
you can read those galleys when you get them, Chris.
Or maybe I need to learn more about basic punctuation. Wow.
Oh. Well, this has been an utter pleasure. I am thrilled that Back Porch will live on our website. I too fantasize about the day that Chris has finished working on his novel and we can get back to telling more of Ruby's story. And so, Anne, thank you so much for saying yes and jumping into this with us. Jeanne, thanks for all the work you did, and we went through lots of versions of this. Barry, I always appreciate the work you do to set things up for us, and of course, Chris, I just feel like it has just been such a pleasure, an honor, and a privilege to get to know you and to work on this with you. No, really, truly, I know you think I'm blowing smoke, but I have such regard for people who can conjure things out of thin air. And, you know, as you heard us talk about, there were moments in this story that, you know, I'll think about that hyphen until I die. You know, you changed my way of looking at tombstones and thinking about tombstones. So I think, you know, what else could a writer hope for but to make that kind of impression?
Maybe that'll be on my tombstone.
There you go. And so to the audience that stuck with us, I just want to invite you next month. We will premiere on the fourth Sunday, The Most Dangerous Game. And then we have some terrific stories lined up for after that, including another contemporary one that I got the rights to that I can't wait to share with you guys. Maybe Chris, do you know this short story, Pie Dance by Molly Giles?
I know the work of Molly Giles. I know her as a novelist more than, I don't think I know that particular story.
Oh,
I'm a fan of her novels.
Yeah, this short story will knock your socks off.
Wow.
And she was as gracious as you are and agreed to let us produce it. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
You know, you ask writers to do something after they've been alone in a house for a year. You know, what you mistake for graciousness is just desperate loneliness. Thank you.
No, it has been a great pleasure. And so thank you to everyone who tuned in. Please tell your friends, your acquaintances that we have this story available on our website. And if you think about it and can give a little donation, we are splitting all of the profits from this telling with the library. So thank you very much. And Barry, is there anything you need to say as we close out?
Nope, I did share the link to support us if you're able to. And yeah, if you're interested in keeping up with us, please subscribe to our newsletter. That's the best way to get regular updates on everything that we're doing. Let me share that link very quickly. Yeah, subscribe to our newsletter if you haven't already to get regular updates, and we always post everything on our website as well as our social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, to keep up to date with us for whatever we have coming up.
Great. All right, everybody. Good night. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Bye-bye.